Hi, everybody. I am super excited for this conversation with Gordon Hunter. Gordon is a friend of ours that we've known for, probably about 16 years at this point. And Gordon's just an incredible guy. He's been a Navy pilot. He's been a pilot for Delta. He's got a Christmas tree farm here in North Atlanta. And he's just one of these guys that you want to get to know because of what an interesting life that he's had, as well as what a high character guy he is. Now, we're going to sit down and I'm going to ask Gordon about his life and experiences with 15 grandchildren and one great-grandchild that's on the way. So pull up a chair, grab yourself a beverage, and enjoy a great conversation with one of my good friends. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Thank you, Gordon, for stopping by the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This has been an exciting event having you on, and looking forward to this conversation.
Great to be with you. I haven't seen you for a while in person, so it's nice to reconnect.
Yeah, at least even if it's by video, it's great to see you.
Good. Thanks. Thank you very much. I love your family. You guys have got some great boys and now some great daughters-in-laws and now some great grandchildren.
Yes.
Not great-grandchildren.
No, I'm
wonderful.
I haven't hit that stage yet of being a great-grandpa. That's a whole other podcast that's in the future.
Well, we're coming up on our first in another month and a half.
Oh, really? Congratulations.
Yep. Our oldest grandson, Tyler Simpson, and his wife, Lauren, are going to have a baby first part of April.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So now you got to have to do a podcast on great-grandfathers sometime.
Right. I've had one great-grandfather on already, but maybe that's something we'll have to add into the collection is start to hunt down great-grandfathers.
Well, actually, if we started having children kind of later in life, but if you start having kids in your early 20s, there's a good chance that you'll have a good crop of great-grandparents. So
yep.
If that trend continues.
Well, what I like to do when we start out talking with grandpas is talk a little bit about your reaction when you were first hearing the news that you were becoming a grandfather. Because so many of us have different reactions from, boy, I thought this would never come, to, oh my gosh, I'm way too young for this. And so I always love hearing from grandfathers about what their reaction was when the kids come in and they tell you that there's a grandkid on the way.
Well, we sort of started our family a little bit later in life. I think our first daughter came when we were in our about 30s, early 30s. So it wasn't like we were really super young, and having a grandchild was going to be a real novel experience that as a younger person. So we were ready for it. Our daughters were we have 4 daughters. The first 2 are twins. One of the twins got married before the other, and they were the first ones to have a child. And we were actually, my wife told me we were overseas actually when we got the announcement that the grandbaby came through, and it was a boy born to my daughter Janine and her husband Kevin, and they were going to graduate school at the University of Utah. So it was in the Salt Lake area, and I think we were overseas on a trip at the time. We got the news that the baby had arrived.
Oh, wow.
But it was fine for us. We were ready for it. We were a little bit older, and it was going to be a fun experience.
Yeah, with me, I think I may have told you or not, but when the kids said, hey, this is coming, wasn't totally unexpected, but at the same time, it was like, wait a second, I'm not ready for this yet. I don't think I'd had my AARP card sent to me at that point. So yeah, there's a little bit of like, hey, what are you guys doing? You're making me old before my time.
Yeah, I didn't have that feeling. It was the right time. I think I calculate today that we had our first grandchild. We were 53,
Okay.
so we were almost in the upper middle age era category. So you approach it with a little bit different philosophy than you would if you were like in your 40s or something like that.
Gotcha. Now, as the grandchildren started coming along, they were initially, I think you guys were pretty remote from the grandchildren. Were you guys living in Georgia at that point? And Kevin and
We were
Janine?
in Georgia, and Janine and Kevin were in Utah doing a graduate school, and then they moved to Texas for a while before they came back to Georgia. So we didn't have a lot of real close contact. We would fly out there, being an airline pilot. We had pass privileges, so we would take a trip out every so often to visit them and get a chance to hold the baby, the
Right.
first, and the first was named Tyler Gordon, which is
Okay.
my first name. So that was kind of neat experience.
I guess at what point did the grandkids start to live closer to you guys?
Well, Janine and Kevin moved back to Atlanta after graduate school and settled into jobs here in the Atlanta area. Her twin sister Janelle was always here, even though she went to BYU. She came back and got a job here and married here. Then my third daughter, Brenna, she married a boy from Colorado, and so they were actually from Utah, but they settled in Colorado. And then my youngest daughter, Megan, married a high school classmate of hers, and they settled in the Atlanta area. So we have three of our four daughters live within 30 minutes of us right now.
Okay.
And it's always been that way with those three.
And then as the grandkids were younger, were you guys doing a lot of the babysitting, or were you making kind of intentional play dates with the kids, or how did those relationships with the early young grandchildren work out for you guys?
Well, my career was that of being an airline pilot, and so I was in and out of town, 2 or 3 days during the week. But what made it nice about that, though, is that when I was home off of trips, I had all day at home. So we could go visit kids and let the parents get out on dates or get out and do some things a little bit. So that worked out really nicely. That was a nice way to be able to help out as grandparents.
Sure. And did you guys start forming pretty strong bonds with the grandkids at that time?
I think so. As much as little kids are, we would go to parks with them and like Stone Mountain Park and a couple of places around town and have little outings with them and all that stuff. So we were always having a great time with them, and it was just, we were very close.
Sure. Were there any particular activities that were set aside with the grandkids that this is the activity that Grandpa and I do? Or or was it ad hoc? Because sometimes it's the grandpas will, hey, we always go after the play date, we go to Baskin Robbins and we always got an ice cream, or we always did something. There was an activity where it was associated with this was grandpa time.
I don't think there was any one single habit pattern that we established with them, like always going out to a certain restaurant or, like you say, going out for ice cream. So I didn't have anything quite patterned like that, but we spent a lot of time with them that was just nice bonding time, playing games and so forth. I just remember being involved as much as I could. And of course, grandmas are always much more involved, I think, that's just by nature. But I don't have anything that I can say that was a direct thing. I had certain hobbies in mind. I was a sailing enthusiast, so a lot of times we'd have some boating activities up toward Lake Lanier or something like that, and the kids would come along, grandkids and stuff. But that was sort of infrequently. We usually visited their homes and just play with the kids in that kind of a way.
Okay. How did the relationships maybe and some of the dynamics change as more of the grandkids came along? Because certainly for a period of time, Tyler and probably the first couple had you guys to themselves, and then you've got more grandchildren that are coming in. And so how did the dividing up the time and dividing up those relationships work out?
I don't have any any recollection of sort of dividing things up. We would have Sunday dinners over at the house, or we'd go visit one or two of the families at a time, and so it was always something that we sort of all did together. I don't
Okay.
recall any really special activities like that, but we were close to all the kids, all the grandkids. We have 15 grandkids,
Wow.
and that's a lot. But my third daughter, Brenna, who lived in Colorado most of their life, we would fly out there on passes and spend 3 or 4 days with them and go to their kids. They were really, as they grew up a little bit, they got very active in theater. So we went to a lot of their plays as they grew up through elementary school and into high school. That was sort of a separate thing. Our other three daughters here in the Atlanta area, we would always go to the kids' activities where they were sports activities or church performances or church sports or something like that. But it was we were always pretty busy with doing that from weekend to weekend.
Oh, that's great. I don't know if the grandkids ever told you, but one of the things that comes up when I'm talking with older grandchildren that are remembering back about their grandfathers is how important it was that the grandparents were at some of those recitals and were at some of the sporting events. I mean, a 10-year-old's not going to tell you that it meant a lot to them that you were there.
You're right. Yeah.
But it's a memory that's with somebody, and when they're in their 40s and 50s, it is a memory of, Granddad used to come out and he would warm up the pitchers in Little League, or he would jump in and be kind of the quasi equipment manager for the football team. And having the grandparents there actually means quite a bit to the grandchildren. So that's great.
Yeah, I agree with you. They do remember that when they get to be preteens and teens, that becomes something that they recollect a lot. So we did a lot of share of that. As kids got older, it was actually more fun to me relating to the kids as they became preteens and teens. They have a lot of exercise. Sometimes when the teenagers get up there, they don't want to be around adults too much. But I always felt like they always enjoyed us participating in their special activities, whether it was musical band or whether it was sports or plays or whatever. We always sponsored them and did all we could to be around them. And I think it was a wonderful experience. And I know my grandparents were kind of interesting people. My grandpas were both very well-to-do businessmen.
Okay.
And I always remember them visiting them being and seeing me like coats, suits, shirts and ties and stuff, and never had any really, throwing a baseball on a lawn or something with them. They were always kind of a little much more formal. It was the age where children were to be seen and not to be heard. And that's really changed in our generation. We've been very actively involved with the grandkids, and that's been a wonderful thing. I look back and I think that's so much better than my grandparents. I never got to know my grandparents very well as personalities.
Hmm.
They were just kind of, I won't say stodgy, but they weren't fun to be around.
Sure.
I always had a great respect for my grandfathers, but I never felt like I was really close to them or could confide in them even. But I think it's different with this generation now.
Oh, I think so quite a bit. And talking with other grandfathers and people, it seems that, when the grandfathers are around and involved in the children's lives, especially early on, that when they do get to that teenage years and early 20s and there's decision making going on and questioning of, values and life choices, that grandparents and grandfathers in particular can have a role in that because they're not the parent.
That's right.
But if you don't have that relationship early, then you're not the confidant that they're going to. They're going to another friend with, that doesn't have the life experience that we do.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I don't think any of my grandkids would ever have a second thought about asking me questions about life. In fact, I've had a few of them had a little book report or assignments in their classes when they were in elementary school about writing something about their grandparents, and so they would interview me a little bit for things and stuff like that. So I think I've I know that I have a good relationship with all of my 15 grandkids.
Now, how did you see you talked a little bit about how as they were getting into the preteen and teen years that relationship evolved. How did some of that evolution come about, and what were you thinking about, or what was the impact to you seeing them start to become young adults?
Oh, I think it's great when they get old enough we can really have a meaningful conversation with them, not just sort of kid talk. Like, how are you doing? How was school today? To really have some nice conversations with them about life itself, and to have them ask me questions about life, and questions about things that they would like to have a non-parent give an answer to, or help them with. I can't help them with mathematics or something like that. I don't do their homework for them,
Right.
but I've been the result of some book reports or reports on things like that, which have been a lot of fun.
Now, did you find too that they started to draw into some of the interests that you have, whether it was with the radios or cars, or like you said, the sailing a little bit?
Well, I think one of my talents, I guess you can say, is my career as a pilot. First as a Navy pilot, and then as a Delta Airlines pilot. And so I had some influence that way. I was on my last flight as a Delta pilot. It's really fun. My last flight as a Delta pilot was also taking a Delta airplane, a Boeing 727, from Atlanta out to the boneyard out in California on the desert. And I got to invite my family to go on the airplane with me. That's all we had, just my family on the airplane. Another Delta pilot, and myself, and a flight engineer, and we had the whole plane to ourselves. So I took as many of the grandkids as could come along, and it was a great experience. And I have a video that my wife Brooke took, and my son-in-law Kevin took, and I had a friend of mine that came with me, another airline pilot who'd already been retired, and he took some video. So we got a lot of things. And it was so much fun. And then, so the kids had a experience of being around airplanes and flying. And two of my older grandsons were really interested in aviation, and I helped them through getting their pilot's licenses. And two of my grandsons actually have private pilot licenses.
Wow,
That's been fun. And then I bought an airplane about 4 or 5 years ago, a little Cessna 172, and I kept it down in Florida. And when the family would come down, the whole family would come down for a week with us, I would take them all up flying around the Gulf Coast area, every one of them. And so that was a hoot. That was really a lot of fun.
Do you find when you have them up in the air like that, you've got a little bit of a captive audience to share some of your wisdom and life lessons with those guys?
Yeah, I think so. At least they would appreciate the beauty of flying, as far as looking out the window and seeing the earth and the beauty around us, and then also the techniques of actually flying. The aerodynamics of how an airplane works, and all that stuff. I think they all just were really fascinated by it. I'm sure it probably evolved in some discussions later on about life experience and how important it is to have a career in your life that you enjoy, that you have fun with. And they know that I've always enjoyed flying, and it was great to have a career that you look forward to going to work. And I've always encouraged all of them, as they're growing up and going to, now most of them in high school and college, choose a career that you really, really want to do, really enjoy, something that brings you great satisfaction. And I think they're pretty much getting on all the path for that.
That's great. Well, and I think too, just knowing you a little bit, is that they've also got an idea that you can be interested in a lot of different things. To your point about a career, is that they may start something in their 20s. By the time they're in their mid-30s, that's not quite for me. And then they know that, hey, there's another interest. I can follow that. I can explore that a little bit more.
Yeah. I'd say one thing that has bonded our family together too, in a very big way, has been our Christmas tree farm. I just thought of that. They all four daughters get together in November just before Thanksgiving and help organize the business, which opens the day after Thanksgiving historically. Although this year we opened a Saturday before, but all of the grandkids get involved. All of them have come out and worked on the farm. I mean, really worked. It's a great thing to see your grandkids work hard physically and enjoy it and feel a great camaraderie and friendship with each other and being outward toward the public,
Right.
meeting people and talking with people. I think it develops their character and their confidence.
Oh, absolutely. And then being exposed to how a business runs,
That's right.
because
Yeah.
they start to understand that there's cost to those t-shirts that they wear, and there's
Yeah.
cost to, having the hot chocolate and running the tractor.
Yeah, and the older ones now, they really want to keep the business going. We thought, my wife Brooke and I thought that we were going to really kind of wind it down, but we've left it up to them, and now it's actually being run by our twin daughters and their families, and they want to keep it going. And the grandkids now, don't you talk to me about not having the farm anymore. We want to keep it going. We want to be involved with it. So we'll see how that works out, because they're not afraid to work, though. I tell you, it's wonderful that they all have a great work ethic, and I'm very proud of that. But maybe we'll keep this thing going for a little bit longer and let them enjoy it. But and when we have our little meetings after the day, we come in from a day working on the farm, and we have supper around the dinner table. We have everybody there, and we talk about the business and the fun experiences we've had, and even talking about the financial ins and outs of the business. And they're mature enough to understand, yeah, this really is a business, but it's one that it's fun to do, and we enjoy it. And we love to have the people out there to come and visit and to pay compliments about how much they've enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, I know from going out there these last 15 years or so, it's grown. Every year there's a little bit extra going on.
Yeah, they're actually getting a little nervous about it. We had such a crowds in the last few years that we hardly have room to park all the cars that come in one time. It's extraordinary. We're become a victim of our success, actually.
Right. Well, that can definitely happen, and that's also a good learning lesson for those grandkids, is what happens when a business can be so successful that creates a whole other set of issues.
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's been a great learning experience for all of them, I'm sure. They all look forward to it, and it's the one thing that probably has kept our family really close and united, is because everybody's got a personal investment in the farm business, and it's been fun.
What a great carrot to dangle in front of the grandkids to have them relocate back into the Atlanta area, after they're done with colleges and everything else, right?
That's good, except we do realize that when the boys marry girls, usually the emphasis is to try and go where the girls are from or where their families are. So it's going to be a little bit interesting. I mean, I can see that with Janine and Kevin. He was a Idaho boy growing up, but he's come back to Georgia, and now he's become a native here, and, and all the kids are too.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. But they've always got this place. We plan on keeping it as long as we're alive. I hope that it'll always be the home base for all of our family, kids and grandkids,
sure.
and maybe now even great grandkids.
And as these kids are now in college, how does your time with them work out a little bit more? Is it because it goes from when they're younger, having all sorts of activities where we're sporting events or theater or whatnot.
Yeah.
And now they're older, they're coming back for Thanksgiving or college breaks. How's that relationship changed even a little bit more as they're in these college years and these young adult years?
Well, the thing I mentioned, there's such a difference between my generation and their generation, is my grandparents there's always sort of a distance. There was never a closeness. It was a great level of respect. But I mean, I try and text these kids. Now we have the wonderful benefits of communication by by texting and FaceTiming and stuff like that, that we can actually keep on conversations with them throughout the days and the weeks and the months. And so that's what we're kind of relying on now. The ones that are away to college, we keep track of them. We just had some recent conversations with the three of them that are going out to college experiences out in Utah right now, and it's just fun to do that and keep up with them. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think I got a pretty good personal relationship with all of them, and it makes me feel really, really proud and really happy.
That's great. And that's one of the things too that I think is important and has come across in some of the conversations that I've had, is that it is important that the grandparents keep kind of initiating that conversation and keeping that relationship going, because it's not that the kids don't want that. It's just that, hey, when I was 19, 20, 23 years old, whatever, reaching out to my grandfather wasn't necessarily the first priority, but those were really enriching conversations when I did pick up the phone or he called or whatever. So that's great that you're taking that initiative and using the technology too, right? It's
that's been a blessing. It really has. I'm thinking one thing that one of my granddaughters has gone to beautician school, and so she's working in a studio right now. So I've had her come over and cut my hair.
Oh, nice.
Hey, Ken, come on over. I need a haircut. So she'll come over and cut my hair. So it's just fun. It's fun to treat those grandkids as young adults. I think that's it. It gives them confidence, it's wonderful when they can come and talk to you more as an adult now than just looking up to grandpa or grandma. It's kind of a strange thing too, because now as you get really older, it's I can't describe it, but it's a little different relationship than before. But I think it's comfortable. The only thing I don't want them to feel like grandma and grandpa are becoming these kind of doddering older people who are losing their ability to have conversation and ability to think and talk and engage in conversation. But as long as we can keep vital ourselves with our grandchildren, I think that's just really exciting.
Well, and that's a great goal too, to have, to make sure that you're maintaining your health. Yeah. You're keeping as sharp as you can, and is for those relationships, right? It's not just about you to feel good for you. It's, hey, I've got a great grandkid on the way. I want to be able to, chase a 2-year-old around again. And so that's a great goal to have, to keep that going.
Yep, you're right.
Through all your experience with the 15 grandchildren, what are some of the advice that you would have for a younger grandfather like myself with going through this whole experience?
Well, just keep close to them. You've got to maintain a certain distance to let them grow and make their own decisions. I think the best advice is to let them come to you for advice rather than trying to be judgmental on what they're doing and what their career is. We all have to learn from mistakes. Sometimes we all make good decisions. Sometimes we make ones that we wish we hadn't done. But I think you need to let them make decisions. If they want some advice from you or want your opinion, then that's great. But I don't want it to be a lasting thing. I think they need to have their own independence and make their own choices. And but it's really a pleasure when they do come to you and ask for opinions about things. I just, like I said, I go back to my grandparents. I wish that I had more time and spent more time with them and learned more about their personal lives. I learned more about their lives after they were gone, just talking with my parents and uncles and aunts than I did actually with my grandparents themselves. I missed a lot of really, really interesting things. My grandparents were, on my father's side, were born in Canada, and there's a lot of things I wish I had been able to ask them about their lives and what it was like for them growing up. But the communication has changed now. If my kids and grandkids ask me any questions about my youth or different things that are going on, I think it's wonderful to give them as much information as I can.
And that's one of the things too that has really come out is being able to go and keep those relationships going. When I'm talking with people my age about their grandfathers, that's one of the things that they talk about is learning a work ethic, whether it was on a farm or seeing a grandfather going to business, and the person would spend a couple of weeks during the summer helping them with their business. It's just important to keep that line of communication, and then knowing too, I think that as a grandfather, you're always setting an example, good or bad, for the grandchildren.
That's right.
So
yeah, but it keeps you on your toes. You can't
absolutely
have a letdown. If you want to be a role model to your grandkids, you better be a role model and not. But they need to know you're human,
right?
But and we all are human. None of us are perfect, but if you want to encourage them to take the right path, you got to be on it yourself.
Yeah, and especially I think that's true when I've talked with women about their grandfathers. Is you never know, I think, as an individual, and this is, for anybody really, but as an individual, you never know who's watching you and who's watching and taking in that information, right? There's lessons that some of the women I've talked to have told me about their grandfathers, and their grandfathers never turned around and said, hey, here's a lesson for you, or here's how you want to do this. It was always watching from the kitchen table how the grandfather treated the grandmother and how the grandfather treated other people. And it was that taking in of that information. So
that's true. And I have to watch myself too, and treat my wife with sometimes greater respect than I do. I mean, not that I show disrespect, but I need to show love and affection in front of the children and grandchildren. So that sets an example for them as to how they want to have a relationship with their spouses and families.
As we wrap up this conversation, I'd love for you to tell me a story of being a grandfather, one of your favorite stories. And it's not to single out any one of the grandkids, but there's probably a few stories that you have of Tyler falling out of the boat or something, or you're playing a prank on somebody. And so I'd love for you to share a favorite grandpa story with me.
Gosh, there's so many. It's hard to say, but I do have a couple. One most recently is I had a chance to baptize one of my grandsons. He was the latest one in the family to be baptized in the church. He just always wanted to kind of make a decision for himself, and his mother let him kind of take his own path a little bit. But just a few years ago, he came to the conclusion that he would like to be baptized in the church, and so we actually had a baptism in our swimming pool in the backyard, and I got a chance to actually baptize him. So that was a wonderful experience, and something we have a bond that will never ever be closed. And then I remember this funny little experience. I remember one time the whole family took a trip up to Nauvoo, to the church historical sites up in Nauvoo, and we had a whole day of driving up there in a great big kind of a van that we rented, and had a whole bunch of kids and people there. I remember we checked into a motel, and they had a swimming pool. We were really tired, it's hot, and I was in the pool, and one of the families was changing clothes, and one of the little granddaughters came into the pool area, and she saw me, and she says, Grandpa, and she jumped in the water and swam. She must have been 5 or 6 years old or something like that, and swam over to me and grabbed me. And I don't know, it's just one of those things that the look on her face and the excitement that she had seeing Grandpa and coming over, swimming across the pool to me was just it's something I never forget. And I remind her of it a lot of times too. That was a really neat experience.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, just things like that. Little things just mean a lot, both to them and to me.
I think with me, it's been my grandson's old enough now that he recognizes me and came charging at me when I saw him. So he's a little kid. Yeah. He's throwing himself all around, and he comes in and it's a half, I'm going to give you a big hug, and half, here comes a body slam. So.
Oh, that's great.
But
yeah, you have so many beautiful memories, and they'll remember that too when they get older.
Well, Gordon, thank you so much for being a guest on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I have really, truly enjoyed this conversation with you, and appreciate you taking time out of your day to visit with me.
Great. Well, thank you, Greg. I love you and your family. Your boys have been extra special, and I've always felt like I had a really good relationship with them, and I'm sure I still do.
Absolutely. Wow, what a great conversation with Gordon. One of the biggest takeaways that I had was just the difference, as Gordon explained it, between his interaction with his grandfathers and the way that he interacts with his grandchildren. I know that interaction that he and Brooke have is definitely intentional and something that they consciously set out to do differently and to have a different type of relationship. Do me a favor, shoot me an email at greg@cool-grandpa.com and let me know what your big aha moment was out of this conversation. Remember, share this conversation with some of your friends that are interested in the relationships that grandfathers have with grandchildren and families. And remember to stay cool until the next time. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.